Hi, students. You did such a good job in class today. I really want to praise you for that. Um, I was thinking about how far we got in the discussion questions, and there's a couple of things I wanted to pull out of that um, just to put in the front of your mind for when you're reading Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, because one of the things that's kind of hard about political philosophy course is that I have to connect the dots between what we read, uh, because all the things we read are worthwhile in themselves, but we're also kind of exploring these things as a story or a narrative together. So, one question to ask might be, what are the things about No Country for Old Men that are important to think about for political philosophy for the course? And then specifically for as we go to MLK. Um, the thing I really wanted to point out about class today, uh, one of them is something I hope we discuss recurringly. Well, I mean, I hope we discuss both things recurringly, but one of them is something I think emerges as the semester goes on. And another is something that we probably just need to be explicit about up front. So that, I'll start with that, is one of the things that came up in class is that Shiger sees himself as the judge. He's judging who should live and who should die. And he always uses the coin as sort of his instrument, his source of judgment, and his source of law, and evidence of like his fairness and his impartiality. So when you have a judge, you have to ask, what is he the judge of, and what is the law that he uses to judge with? When you look at Shiger, by the time that you get to Carla Jean's sort of challenging him about the falseness of his claim to authority, it becomes clear that whatever law Shiger is using is not making a lot of sense, and is kind of incoherent. The incoherence gets bigger after he murders her and he encounters the two boys on their bikes who give him their shirt and help him without wanting any money, and in fact they refuse money from him. So Carla Jean is going to say, this is not something you're doing that is separate from you. You're not enforcing a law. You are basically making yourself the source of a false law that you don't want to take responsibility for. And you could stop it at any time. She flips it on him. The sort of claim he's making. She turns it on his head. It says, no, you don't even have to do this in the first place, right? Like, you're making it sound like you're reluctant or you're carrying out some mission from some other source, like fate or something. But because of freedom, because of human freedom, you could stop at any time. And then the boys also astound him because they gratuitously provide for him in his time of need, and they don't expect anything in return. And in fact, when he tries to give them something in return, which in a way would make them square with him, they won't take it, because there are some things humans do because it is the right thing to do and not because we're going to get something for it. If we go back to the idea of there's a judge of human action, right? One of the claims about morality that I think Sugar embodies well is that there's an arbiter or authority that can judge good and evil acts, and they've got to refer to some law that they're enforcing, which causes us to ask, what's the source of this law? It's all over the MLK stuff we're reading. It's part of the connection I'm trying to make for you. But if there's a judge, just go back, don't even think about this in terms of Sugar. But if there's a judge and there's a law, what does that mean there has to be in the first place? What it means is that the person being judged had to have had a choice. The judge, in a sense, is only able to judge because humans can do otherwise. They can choose a certain path, or they can reject that path. And so they're accountable. They can be said to be accountable. And it's the judge who can determine that, right? Sorry. Well, if we can be accountable, then that means, working backwards, that we can be held responsible because we're free. Okay, so human freedom is what creates the entire possibility of morality. And that is kind of the core of what I'm trying to ask you to think about, right? Humans, as free beings, they have choices to make. And the choices they make can be judged as better or worse. Judgment relies on a source, a law, right? And so the question is, what's the content of that law? You're going to ask that question over and over again as the course goes on, all the way until we get to Blood Meridian. Ask that question when you're reading MLK, right? He uses the theme of freedom a lot, asking what freedom requires, talking about what freedom does to the human soul, how it makes the search for living in freedom irresistible. He talks about how to determine when a law is good or bad. And to do that, he has to refer to some type of external law. Okay, so he says you can make a judgment based on a law that's written, but there's something more important than that. There's a law that's more important than that, and that law is something eternal, something philosophical, maybe something theological, maybe, that you can compare the written law to and can actually tell you if the laws being written in your community are binding on you at all. Because a free person doesn't have to follow every command, right? A free person is meant to choose to follow what is good. So, That's my advice to you while you're reading it. That's my attempt to connect the two things for you. And I also just want to remind you that this is a really exceptional piece of philosophy, but there are parts of it that are going to be very raw, um, very emotional, very strong, uh, and reflect some really vile moments from our history that he has to talk about, and vile behaviors that he has to talk about because they're part of his reality. And in order to make his case about the failures of free people in the face of such evil, and you'll notice he makes distinctions. Some free people choose to directly engage in the evil, others choose to ignore it or benefit from it, or just pay lip service to how bad it is. But in order to talk about this mystery of human freedom in the face of evil, right? And then to say, let's use human freedom to overcome the evil, he's got to think about and speak about and puzzle over very difficult things, very vile and sad things. And this is, in a way, kind of a political work, but it's an extremely personal political work. It's like he's bearing his soul to us as he's thinking through these things. So that's kind of what I'd leave you with, and I hope that's helpful to maybe put some things together for you.